If you love the West Tigers as much as we do, and that's an awful lot, you're welcome to come and join us in our discussions on the West Tigers podcast forum. Our forum is the #1 forum for West Tigers fans to talk everything West Tigers. westtigerspodcast.com.au/forum. We hope to see you there soon. Gary Watson, you're off your deathbed from COVID. It's good to see you. How did you go last night, being sick and watching the West Tigers?
Watching that first half, I wished I was dead.
So did we.
So, yeah, I was happy for COVID to take me at that point in time. It wasn't a great game. Yeah, I wish I was dead. That's it.
Steve, there almost wasn't a West Tigers podcast tonight. If you asked me after 55 minutes of that game, I'm like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do a podcast. I was sort of over the whole situation.
Well, Joel, it's going to be a pretty ad-lib podcast because I couldn't watch the game back today. There's just no way. I went through the play-by-play stats that you get online. That was the most I could do in preparation for tonight.
And Nick's here and in good health by the look of it, but has been torturing himself, reading the socials, watching back highlight clips, watching the game again. You're a masochist.
I just like to soak myself in, ingest everything that is West Tigers. Look, you boys know I was out last night, so I watched most of the first half and missed a lot of the second half, so I watched the full replay today just to try and prep as I do as a professional for this podcast. But as you boys sort of alluded to, the first 60-odd minutes were pretty ordinary, weren't they? I'm glad I knew the result before I watched the replay today because it was looking like it was going to get really ugly at one point midway through that second half last night. So yeah. I'm glad we came back. We did show a lot of spirit to come back into that game, but for the majority, it was horrible.
I've got 3 or 4 one-words. We'll go to you guys in a moment for your one-word contribution. But from the West Tigers podcast forum, Tiger Tragic's word is frustration, especially over the ref and the bunker. We'll talk about that shortly. Teddy S's word was refed out. And because I always have a few one words. Teddy S says they're also going to throw in body language, and saying that the body language shows that maybe some of our players have had enough. Canberra Tigers' word is dead wood. We still have a lot to shed. Now, if we fire up the shredder anymore, Canberra Tiger, and without adding some people in, Gary and Steve are going to get a run soon. NatMac78's word is momentum. We finally had it, but ran out of time. Wagga Tiger's word is frustrated. There's a team in there if Benji can just unlock it. Peter A's word, this is out of left field. Actually, I'll leave Peter A's to last, and then we'll go from there, because that'll open a little conversation, I think. Yanni's word is backwards. We're going backwards, and Benji needs to go. Mac Tiger, kicking. We need a 5th tackle option, and also referees was a word for Mac Tiger, I presume in a negative sense. Mike's word is wooden spoon. Eddie's word was along those lines. What did Eddie's word was? Wooden
spoon race.
Spoon race. Race to the bottom. Snake's word is dumb. There's just not enough smarts in our team. Tiger Town SFS's word is cooked. Our season is cooked. And Dirty Reds, discipline. That's what cost us tonight. Peter A. Gary said, Brad Arthur, now. That is out of left field. What do we think about, a big shake-up in the coaching ranks?
I do think questions are going to start being asked around Benji Marshall's performance. I really think that if there isn't significant signs of improvement soon, that noise around his coaching is going to get fairly loud. So I think this second half of the season that we're just about coming into is going to be really crucial on whether he has a career as a coach or not. So he's got some work to put in over the next couple of months.
Steve, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we don't know exactly where Benji is in his progress as a coach. We knew last year that he was green. We don't know if he's going to take 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 8 years. It's just hard to sort of tell how coached we are, because I'd suggest the Cowboys looked like they had a game plan. They were on the advantage line. They quick play the balls. They looked like they were ready to sort of take it to us. And we don't seem to have that variation. So I don't know. It's going to be, so long as we keep losing games, that'll continue to be something that people raise, the coaching issue.
Joel, I think we mentioned this last pod or a couple of pods ago, and I made the point. I said that Benji Marshall has proven himself through his playing career that he's a champion. He's got a champion's mindset and mentality. And from what I've seen at the beginning of the year, the beginning of this season, he seems to be bringing that mindset to his coaching. He's definitely toughened up, I think. With his coaching, he gives that persona anyway. But I also made the point that I said I think he's going to make it, and let's hope it's sooner rather than later, which is what you're saying, Joel. We don't know how long it's going to take. He's not the finished product. And I don't know how long we've got before we have to start thinking about that, because it's just been so long. It's just been so long, since we've tasted any success. And maybe we just can't wait for another 3 years for Benji to mature into the coach that he will become.
Yeah.
And I don't like saying that, because I have a lot of respect and time for Benji, as I think most of us do, in some respect at least.
Yeah, 100%.
Steve, I don't think it's a sooner or later thing, though. If he doesn't start to get results soon, and the pressure builds, and it gets to the point where he's no longer West Tigers coach in the next 12 months or so, then that's his coaching career, in my opinion. If he doesn't make good of this shot, then I don't think he gets another opportunity. So while I do think there is a good coach there, because he's come in the manner that he's come in, with not a lot of experience, with not a lot of a history in coaching, I think if this doesn't work, he ends up back in the media. I don't see him going to another club and serving an apprenticeship for the next 5 years as an assistant coach somewhere, looking for that next chance to come up. We're in a position now that's make or break for Benji Marshall. And I spoke last week, I said that the players need to stand up for him. That they say all the right things. They talk about being behind Benji 100%, but they need to show that on the field. And if they want him as the coach moving forward, they've got a couple of months to really turn this around and stand up for him out on the field. There's been enough talk about how they support him as a coach, how they think he's a great coach. They need to show it on the field, and our senior leaders need to show that on the field very, very soon. Otherwise, there's going to be massive questions asked about Benji as a West Tigers coach. And as I said, I don't think he gets another shot after this.
The trouble is, how much can you squeeze out of the lemon? How much ability is really there? I mean, playing to potential? There's a lot of guys in that team still that are probably playing just about at potential.
I think the last couple of weeks, he's been let down by some of the senior guys. Those two sin binnings yesterday.
Yeah.
Like my one word for this week was ill discipline, because we won outside of playing with 12 men. We won that game 28-6. It's the 20 minutes where we had 12 men on the field that really hurt us. I know we'll pour in that first half, but the Cowboys weren't anything flash either. We lost that game in that 20 minutes that we had those players off the field.
Well, it wasn't just that 20 minutes. Yeah, that's where they scored their points. You can't argue that. But I've got a few stats here, because my word was discipline as well. That was my one word for tonight. And here's the first 20 minutes for you. In the first 20 minutes, we made 4 errors. We had 3 ruck infringements, 2 penalties against us, 1 player put on report and 1 player put in the sin bin. And the score after the first 20 minutes was 14-0. And as Gary said, those 14 points were scored with that one player in the sin bin. That was our first 20 minutes. You cannot come back from that start at NRL level. You're giving a team an absolute leg up. Any advantage that we may have had by coming off the bye and being freshened up and 2 weeks to prepare and all that sort of talk, all that's gone when you put in a first 20 minutes like that with that ill-disciplined performance. And this is what concerns me most about, if we want to talk Benji, we may be going too far into it, Joel, because we're just talking one words at the moment. But this is what concerns me most, is that we started the season, we had half a dozen games where we looked like we were turning a corner. But now, the last 3 games that we've played, we've just seen an absolute repetition of the type of football we've played last year, the year before that. And that is just this ill-disciplined brand of football where we just shoot ourselves in the foot. And yeah, we might do some good things, and we all walk away, as I've read online ad nauseam in the last 24 hours. Oh, we were so close. Great comeback. Oh, we almost got there. The ref ruined it. No, none of that. None of that. It was our lack of discipline on the football field that didn't give us a chance to contest in that game when it mattered. We only contested in that game at the back end of the game when the Cowboys took their foot off the pedal. And that's a real worry.
All around, our first 20 minutes was poor yesterday. The first half was poor all around. The thing is, even while being poor, we were competing with the Cowboys up until that first sin binning. Up until that first sin binning, we were right in that game and it had our chances. Toa almost went through not long before that first sin binning. So we were really competing in that game despite those errors. For me, and those errors, we've been a slow starting side all season. The whole season, that first 20 minutes, we've been incredibly poor. We struggle to get up the field, and we struggle to create chances in that first 20 minutes. And that was again quite evident yesterday. But our senior players let us down yesterday. It wasn't the young players. It was the senior players who let us down through poor discipline, through poor errors, and from... I know Benji Marshall and a lot of people have come out and said the sin binnings were harsh, and they were hard. They were hard sin bins. But there's no doubt that Jerome Luai held down 2 tackles in a row. I don't think that can even be questioned. He held on for too long, and while I thought the sin binning was harsh, him holding down put him in that position to be binned. Adam Dewey, who I thought was trying to turn around and put himself in a bad position, but he put himself in a bad position to be sin binned. They're the 2 crucial errors that cost us yesterday. But I do agree with Steve. The discipline was poor across the game, right up and probably including that last 20 minutes where we did fight back.
I'm going to channel my inner Gary here and say not just 2 things can be right at the same time, but 3 things can be right at the same time. So I am 100% on board with the West Tigers being an organisation that's never really had discipline. Like discipline is not it's not our master. We can't do a master class on discipline on any level over more than 2 decades. I think talking about the first 20 minutes, I don't think that it's necessarily discipline. I thought we were just hanging in there. I thought the Cowboys were smashing us, and we'll get around to my 1 words in a moment, and one of those 1 words relates to that. And I think we were just hanging in and trying to slow their play the ball. So not discounting that discipline is poor, but I think that the way that
which
the game
has been
was going
has been the trade all season. That's what I meant in that opening 20 minutes.
Exactly. And I think the refereeing also, it felt to me like there was more onus on us getting off the tackle player than the Cowboys. They were able to slow us down. But they play the ball. The way they're able to get to their feet, very similar to some of the other really good teams, we are like slugs getting to our feet. And the way that they wrestle, the way that they get to their feet, the way that they keep moving, even when they're tackled, is very impressive. Steve, and then Nick, I've got a question for you.
That you talk about the refereeing, and I think that comes back to what we talked about earlier about Benji and the game plan and the cheat sheet and the preparation sheet that they go through before a game. in the week leading up to the game. We knew we had Klein in the bunker, and we knew we had Sutton on the field.
That's true.
Two of the most pedantic referees, right, very good at their craft. They officiate the rules exceptionally well. I think they referee a football game terribly. That's just my personal opinion. But they officiate the rules exceptionally well, especially Sutton. Right? He can blow the pee out of a whistle. Now, but the point is, we knew he was the referee. So therefore, in preparation, surely over and over and over again, it had to be drummed into the team. And back to Gary's point earlier about our senior players, led by our senior players, that we need to be absolutely on our game, right? Because we will get penalised at the slightest thing, right? And despite the fact that everyone wanted to get up Bateman and show him how tough we were, the ill discipline that created, right, the brawn over brain that created meant that we had two blokes spend 10 minutes in the sin bin each. It was dumb football, and we did not think about who was refereeing and the way we had to play because of that.
Steve, you and I had a conversation one-on-one last week, and we spoke about, I said to you, now you made a mistake there, Steve, because you were talking about our wonderful club that we all love, but you started the sentence with surely, and that's always a big mistake, because I would say something like, surely we could see Royce Hunt is not a starting prop and he's better off on the bench and we should start Sione Fainu instead, because our bench was, pretty ineffective and Royce Hunt was really ineffective. Anyway, Nick, two of my words are unorthodox and touch footy. Teams are often representations of the way that their coach has their philosophy, their personality. I see a mirror of Benji Marshall in a lot of our team on the field.
I was going to jump in and say that too. Like Gary was talking about, I think you've all talked about how messy, especially the opening 20 minutes was. And it's not just the ill-disciplined efforts around holding players down too long, but a lot of the forced passes, and I know I made a mention of that in our group chat last night, is, even on the second and third tackle, and I know the plan looked like to go wide early, but the silly tap-ons, like Samuel Afenu tried to tap on the second tackle and went behind Charlie Staines, I think, and over the sideline, but that's not warranted. In the first 20 minutes, you need to grind your way into the game, and you need to be neck and neck. And I know Gary made a point that we were running neck and neck until the first sin bin, and we were. Although Joel, as you said, the Cowboys were looking pretty sharp and were probably all over the top of us.
Yeah.
But you've got to earn your way into a match, and I don't think we're doing that. I think, like you just suggested, Joel, or sort of spoke towards, we are sort of playing an expansive brand early, which is very attacking-wise, and that is how Benji plays. And I wonder, there's still a lot of talk that, in the training field, Benji jumps in and does a lot of the moves himself and runs a lot of the plays. But I just wonder whether the players are watching that and trying to emulate him a bit too much. Maybe they need to know to roll a bit more.
Luai,
and leave that
being such a apprentice of Marshall in the way that he played, like sometimes that ekes into his game. And I'm sure Penrith fans would say that's probably one of his weaker points, is when he does play too unstructured. Gary had his hand up.
Yeah, that opening 20 minutes, I think I said after round one that opening 20 minutes is going to be an issue for us all year. And I won't step away from that. That opening 20 minutes in every game is going to be a time in a game where we have to hang on. And I think that little bit more expanse that we play with is kind of, it's there to counter our inability to get down the field for our forwards in that opening 20. Even a guy like Terrell May, who's having a wonderful season, he struggles in that opening 20 minutes against fresh forwards. He gets better the longer he's out on the field and as other forwards tire, because he's not that tall. He's a decent size, but he's not that tall. I don't think he has the size and to steal one of Joel's word, the physicality to really dent the line. So he gets better as a game, and you'll see, if you watch him in the first 20 minutes of most games, he will often go to the line and pass early in the game, pass to another forward, and all that, to me, is a strategy to overcome our lack of punch in that opening 20 minutes. Now, what I was hoping is that once we had Hunt starting, that would get a little bit of that punch. But when you have a look at his stats from last night of one run for 7 metres, It's quite obvious that we did not get that from him last night. So I do agree that I think we need to be starting with Sione moving forward, but that's not going to fix that issue either. That 20 minutes is going to have to be a period of the game where we're hanging on into the game. I don't see that changing, and that's why ill-disciplined mistakes, like after getting towards the end of that 20-minute, like partway through that 20 minutes and getting a guy sin bin, we can't afford, because that's the toughest part of the game for us. I think you'll see us come back over the top of teams late in games like we did last night, but we've really got to be really disciplined in that first 20 minutes.
Low percentage plays, trying to score on every play. Attention to detail, Steve. And also, like, I'm going to say I agree with you in terms of, like, not just discipline in terms of, playing to the rules and making sure that you're dotting I's and crossing T's and not giving away six agains and things like that. But discipline is something that we lack and it's not just this squad. It's something that we've lacked quite often. And that's the discipline of building a game, moving yourself around the field, playing where you want to play, your kicking game, you're setting things up. We just look like we consistently just have to do something every time we get the ball, and it's just not the way that you win games.
Yeah, look, we're definitely struggling at the moment with not having an established organising seven. No matter how you want to paint it, we're struggling with that. I mentioned in the group chat this afternoon that I was watching the Penrith game today, and I just watched Cleary bring that game home for Penrith. I know they haven't set the world on fire this season, but he started off by doing what Cleary does. He kicked a 40-20 to take all the pressure off and change the momentum. But from that point on, he just pretty much single-handedly kept Parramatta, on their own 20 with deep kicking, pinpoint kicking into the corners, and just didn't allow them out and didn't give them an opportunity to come back and win that game. And we haven't done that forever. I can't remember the last time that we were actually able to manage a game. I actually said that, we've had some good wins this year, but every time we win a football game, it always seems to be a frantic type win where we've scrambled really well, or we've come from behind, or we kick a field goal, or we do something exceptional. We never seem to just manage our way through a game where we come off the field and our heart rate is not at 180. You know what I mean? We actually have the game in control. We've managed it. We've brought it home, and we think, job well done, right? Let's pack up and come back next week and do the job again. We haven't done that forever. That's not Luai's natural game, and I have never said that the bloke is not a good footballer. I think he's a fantastic footballer and a great asset, but it's not his go. I don't know whether he can teach it to himself, whether he can learn it, whether he can become that player. I'm starting to really doubt that he can. And I think, we would be best served at this point in time in looking at a player like Adam Reynolds to be our seven. I don't think that's going to happen, but a player like that, let Luai push back out to 6. I don't know what that does to Fainu. That's another conversation, I suppose. Or Mason, for that matter. But that's where we're at.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the West Tigers podcast. Don't forget, if you agree or disagree, we'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on the West Tigers podcast forum. It's free to join, and you can contribute directly to the podcast on the forum. Just head to westtigerspodcast.com.au/forum. We hope to see you there soon.
So would you be looking at a guy like Toby Sexton, who looks like he's on the outer at the Bulldogs?
Oh, to be honest, Gary, I'd have to have a closer look at him. Does he fit the skill set that we're looking for? I personally, you want utopia, don't you? I personally think we need someone with more experience and a track record than what Toby Sexton brings. The skill set is one. Having the skill set to manage the game is one. The experience that you've done it on the big stage is the other thing that I think we need as well. But I don't know if that's a possibility or not.
There's 3 or 4 of those guys, really, Steve.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Probably the hard thing. Like you're looking at a at Adam Reynolds. You're looking at a Nathan Cleary, who's probably the best player in the game, and
the Roosters are getting one. They've managed to do it.
yeah, that is a very good point, but it's really difficult because I don't know who we're going to go out and get. If we could go out and get Adam Reynolds to come across for 1 to 2 years, I would be all over that. But the difficult thing is, I don't know that you can, like, I think if he leaves Brisbane, we're in with a really good chance of that. But it sounds like Brisbane have moved parts around. But there's still a lot of disharmony at Brisbane if you have a look at how they're playing. So I'm sure that there's a lot going on. They've got a lot of off-contract players. So I don't think that Adam Reynolds one is dead in the water yet. But there's not a lot out. Like, you're looking at Daly Cherry Evans, who is possibly still available. I don't know what's going on there. It's a really tough one to kind of fill, because if you're not getting one of those experienced guys, who there's only a few of, you're probably looking at a young guy to come and try and fill that role. And then what does that, as you said, what does that say to Latu Fainu and Heath Mason? It's pretty much putting a line through them. You're making your mind up about them right now.
Well, the other question. Sorry, Nick, if I dominate in there. But the other question then is, because that is the reality, is then are we going to persist with Luai? And if that is the case, because he's an exceptional footballer and he's a switched-on footballer and he just seems to be a smart bloke, so given the correct coaching, maybe he can transform into that player. So then you go back to the question, do we have the right people in the right positions coaching the team that's going to allow that to happen?
For me, the really important thing is, and I said it on the pod last week, is Luai needs to start playing straighter. When he plays straight, I think he does a really good job in that halfback role. I think he does well to create space for his players outside him and creates room for them to do well. And he did it a few times last night. On the Buller try, it was Luai that created that space for him. Now, you're not going to get the big, all the credit for that, because it's a simple play. But the simple plays are what you want from that organising half. You want them creating space so those players outside them are playing better. And he did that a couple of times last night. For me, the game he did that really well was the Dragons game. He needs to play director. He needs to play straighter. He needs to play deep into the line like he can. And then he can play as a halfback. But at the moment, he's going across field more than he's going direct. And that's what he needs to sort out. If he can sort that out, I think he can make a fist of that halfback role, but he has to sort that out. And I'm not sure whether he's getting the right advice or he has the discipline to do that consistently. I think that's still to be seen.
Well, he needs more momentum from his back rowers as well. Look at the difference Isaiah
100%
does. 15-metre runs, and they get that momentum, and then you're already playing straight because the team's going straight. But he's getting the ball because we're going sideways because we keep getting smashed because of physicality, and I'll just have to keep saying it every week until something changes.
It's very hard to play straight when you're not playing against a retreating defence.
Correct. Exactly.
It's incredibly hard, and we've spoken about that a number of times over the years. And we'll eventually let Nick speak. I just know Nick spoke the other night on the midweek pod and spoke for about 35 minutes. Yeah. And kind of just did the whole game preview for us. So
now you've put me on 35 minutes of silence.
Hasn't it been beautiful?
Yeah. Nick, the floor is yours.
Just a couple things on that whole last 25-minute conversation I've been out of.
Can I just add to that, Gary, that I think... sorry, Nick.
I actually think, and I know we'll get to Heath Mason, but I thought he complimented Jerome quite well. He did straighten up the attack on several occasions and looked very dangerous doing that. And we did talk about
He had a great game last night, Nick.
Yeah, we did talk about that a couple of days ago on the pod, what it potentially would look like with him playing in the halves. And he was very quick and he's very evasive on his feet, and we got to see that. Just on what you said, Steve, about 28 minutes ago, on Jerome, whether he can retrain himself as a halfback. So Benji had to retrain himself as he got older, and in the last few years he became more of a game manager. It
took him a long time to do it though, Nick.
It did take him a long time, but Jerome's got a lot of time now. He's got a lot of time left. He's young enough.
We don't.
I don't think Benji ever did that overly successfully. I really don't. I don't think he was ever. I don't think you'd ever say he was an outstanding organising half. He was always a running six, no matter what number he had in his back. I reckon.
I think he made a bit of a fist of it in the last probably 2 to 3 years. That year he had at South, I think he did a reasonable job of it.
I guess my point is though, if we're going to have Jerome locked in as a 7 for long term, if he's going to be around the next 4.5 years, and if we're going to have someone like Latu Fainu next to him or Heath Mason, then I think Jerome has to play a little bit differently. He can't be, hopping and skipping across the field, because it sort of comes back, like I just said with Heath Mason, it did complement well because he straightened it up. And actually, one comment that Scott Drinkwater made after the game in his interview on the field was how dangerous the Tigers looked and how unpredictable they are in that last 20 when we scored all those points. But he was talking about Luai, how he dances all across the middle of the field and you never know what he's going to do. That's an asset. That's something we've got to learn to use, but I think he needs to pull it back a little bit. And I don't know whether he's just trying too hard because we're struggling, we're not getting the wins, but we do need to change it up. Something needs to change.
But it's not just attacking structures. Like a managing halfback, a lot of the attack comes off. Well, no, not all the attack has to come off the halfback. The management of who the attack comes off has to be managed usually by the 7. But it's not just him putting someone through a gap. It's not just him straightening. I don't disagree with any of that. I agree with it 100%. But it's just managing the game. It's putting in the right kick at the right time, at the right spot, with everyone else on the field knowing that that's what's happening, and everyone's in sync because he's got everyone in sync. And I'm not seeing that from him. And I'll go back to Luke Brooks. We never, ever saw it from Luke Brooks. And we're seeing it again at Manly with Luke Brooks. He just can't do it, right? You need someone who can do that. With Melbourne, it used to be, it was a couple of players, but Cameron Smith was so good at just calming everyone down and managing the team home. I know he did it from 9, and he had the help of someone like Cronk, they're at 7. But we don't have that. We look, you mentioned how off the cuff we are, Nick, and that is an asset, but it's also us looking like we're chooks with our heads cut off and no one really knows where we're heading, where we're going. And it comes down to some piece of individual brilliance or the occasional good attacking structured play, which usually involves Buller, if I'm honest. That's what we're missing. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely his passing game and straight and his running game, but it's so much more than that.
Something also that is reminiscent of our darker days that happened in that game, and it's happened in all of our poorer plays, our poorer games this year, probably in some of our wins too, but it hasn't been quite as noticeable. But and we've spoken about it a fair bit on the pod through the years, but compounding mistakes. So, we drop a ball, hand the ball back to the opposition, then we give away a 6 again, and then something else happens and something else happens. So it's sort of multiple things going wrong and not being able to sort of stem that flow. That's what makes me worried about where we might be heading this year. I was pretty optimistic that we were going to be a little more competitive. And there's those moments of brilliance that you see. Toa, for example, Taruva, Buller, you see it every now and then. But in terms of playing like a team and playing like most of the other teams in the competition, we still seem a little bit off the pace, which is frustrating because theoretically, Gary, you would say that building a team to play in the NRL, I don't want to use the term easy because nothing in the NRL, because it's so competitive, is easy. But you would think the more attainable goal would be to build a good, solid team that defends well and makes meters, but may not have the razzle-dazzle to score a lot of points. But we're topsy-turvy on that, which is sort of frustrating.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it, and even a lot of what Steve was talking about, still does come down to a lack of quality across the squad. I still think there's too many players in our top 17 who aren't up to NRL standard. And what that results in is you go out there and you're playing on tilt a little bit. So you know that you've got weaknesses in your squad. So trying to score off like every set of 6 and stuff comes about because you know we've got a guy in the side who's likely to put a ball down. You know you've got a guy in the side who's likely to give away a silly penalty. These sort of things, and I'm not talking about for any individual, but across the squad, it makes it hard to play that really structured and really disciplined sort of football when you got those sort of people still in your team, and players know that they have that. And you said something a little bit ago, Joel, about our lack of push from those second rowers. That makes a massive difference on across the park on what you're able to do with the ball, and it affects your shape and structure so much when you have those weaknesses. And for me, the biggest issue we have is I think we're at least 3 players short of where we need to be a really competitive squad, to be a side that you would think, they're going to make the top 8. I think we're still at least 3 players short. And to be a genuine contender, we're probably 4 or 5 players that I think we need to upgrade on over the next couple of years. But I think we need strong upgrades on at least 3 players going into next season, possibly 4.
Yeah, I think it's interesting talking about the back rowers. You know, we always tend to go back to Seafarth and say, look, the guy's probably not the ideal man to have out there on the right edge, and we need to strengthen that. And you know, we possibly, with the rumours going around, and getting that guy from Newcastle, maybe we are. But I just want to mention Sam Fainu as well. He seems to be flying under the radar a little bit this year. I think he's been injured, right? He's had some injuries, and I think he's still not right because he's not nearly as impactful as he has been. And I don't know whether that's because he's not getting the opportunity, that they're not, you know, running that ball to him like we have previously. But you know, having Seafarth on the right, who is not an attacking weapon, then you go to the left and you go to Fainu, who is either playing injured or not getting an opportunity, and it's sort of like it means both edges are, you know, we're shooting blanks.
Well, I think Fainu is probably at that point where sides have watched a lot more football on him than they'd seen. They know how he likes to play. They know how he likes to receive the ball, and it gets called second year syndrome quite often. But once there's a little bit more vision out there about players and teams get to game plan around them a little bit better, players find that second year a lot harder. And the really good players, they come through that and they adapt their game. So I think he's at that point now, and I do agree at times he's struggled, but there was a couple of nice runs from him last night. There was a really good punchy run that I saw from him that I remember seeing from him. So I'm still quite happy with how he's going. But definitely locking a second rower is something we're really missing this season, and something we need to look at for next year. I'd want to be upgrading both of those for next year.
Nan, I hate to compliment another team's player, but you know that's the standard that we need to be aiming for, to have at least one guy that's as impactful as he is. I mean, that's 2 steps ahead of what we've got there at the moment.
Yeah, he was really good. I tried to take that try off him that he scored just after kick-off in the second half, where I thought he was half a step offside, but you're right, Gary. I slowed it right down to the frame where the ball was leaving the foot, and I'll tell you what, he was millimetre perfect. So, like, it was that close. But even the take, like, yeah, it's so difficult running at full speed with the ball coming from behind you or over the top of your head to actually see it, have the composure to take it, and then fend off whoever's in front of you and, you know, run another 20 metres to score. But yeah, that's quality. He's a quality back row.
And he does that regularly.
Yeah.
He, ever since he's come into grade, he's been pretty good under the high ball.
Well, these are the weapons in those key positions that we need. So hopefully Kai Pearce-Paul comes across. I've been watching him a little bit. Like you said, Steve, you know, there's been a lot of rumours that he may be coming across next season. He's a big boy and he's pretty skillful. So hopefully we can get him. I know, Gary, we've talked about a lock. He's still looking at a centre as well.
Yeah, I think we need a centre as well.
And what about a halfback?
As I spoke earlier, if we get the right halfback, I'd be looking at a halfback as well. And I still think a prop. I think we're still a prop short. Especially, I think we're a starting prop short. Someone with a bit more impact in that first 20 minutes because, as I said, that's been an issue all season. I think it'll be an issue every single game where you play is that lack of impact in that first 20 minutes.
Can I ask, what happened with Royce Hunt last night?
I can only guess that he's picked up some kind of injury. The fact that Twal went off for HIA and didn't come back, I really hope that... it sounds bad. I hope it was an injury.
Yeah.
Because we needed him in that second half. We needed another stint from him because everyone else had to carry that load for him.
There are some positives. I want to talk about a couple of the positives.
Some big positives.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've done some math, and I've taken $175,000, which I think's popped up in the West Tigers bank account in the last couple of days, and I think that's 17 and a half ref sprays. Does Benji? He said the sin binnings were harsh. They scored 4 tries in those 20 minutes when we were down to player. But, I mean, I know Eddie would be in agreement, but does Benji need to come out, Steve, and be a little bit more firm with what because it seems to be every single week we're not getting the rub of the green with the refs.
Yeah, that's right. But my answer is no. He can't do it at the moment because it shifts the blame away from what's happening with our playing group. Our playing group need to take absolute responsibility for that loss this weekend. It wasn't the referee. Yeah, he was tough. Right? He was the same as he always is. We said it during the week. Right? The minute I saw Sutton as our referee, I said, we're toast. We're gone. All right? Now, I say it jokingly, but I mean it because I know we're not disciplined enough to handle his level of scrutiny. And it's the same every single time he referees us. Klein as well. They are the 2 most officious referees that there are. And
pedantic's the word, Steve.
Pedantic. I'm being a little bit professional if I can. But
just a little bit.
There's a few other words that I've probably used to describe them as well. But the fact is, that's the reality, and we have to accept that. And as I said, given away... having the first 20 minutes that we had with the number of errors and penalties and sin binnings and ruck infringements that we had, you can't blame Sutton for that. The team need to take responsibility and do whatever they have to do to not give away those momentum changes and those mistakes that end up us being on our goal line 15 minutes into a game, having set after set after set bombarded on our line, which happens to us most weeks. Then we fatigue. Then the back end of the half, we fall apart.
Steve, you said, you looked at the referees and you knew we were gone. I looked and saw it was Dream Buller's 50th NRL game and I knew we were gone. We just cannot win a milestone game.
No, we can't. That's right.
Doreen Buller, he had a good game. One mistake, which didn't end up being too costly. I was a little bit disappointed with one of his defensive efforts when the Cowboys scored in the first half, but I thought, he does provide such an attacking threat. But I've got a couple of guys here, aside from Mason, and I want to talk about Mason and Latu Fainu in a few minutes, if that's all right. But I've got a wrap on Toa. I thought he had a really good game, provided a real attacking threat. I thought Charlie Staines accounted for himself really well. And Tony Suker off the bench provided something as well for a guy that's only played a small handful of games. He seems to be, Gary, he looks to me like he's not out of place in NRL.
There's definitely some promise there with Suker, and I would actually consider giving him a start soon over Seyfarth. I think he's providing more impact than Seyfarth is providing, so I think he can be an option there on the edge. I do really want to address Toa. I've had my doubts about Toa. He seemed to be a guy who could play 1, maybe 2 really strong games and then would kind of disappear and have a poor game or some really bad defensive reads in a game. His game's gone to another level this year, and I'm willing to call it now that this change is hopefully a permanent change. His upper body strength seems really strong at the moment. I'm really pleased when we get him early ball and it's a 2-on-2 situation. He's a chance at every time of creating space for his winger. Even the one that got intercepted last night, he got intercepted because he had drawn that centre in, and it was a bit of a fluky kind of intercept. So he did really well in that. His upper body strength and that left-hand fend that he's got going at the moment is a real danger. And I think Taruva's going to, in the back half of the season, will get plenty more tries just through the space that he's creating. And not just that, he's scoring tries on his own. He got 2 last night, where one of them was really, really soft, but he seems really hard to put down in a tackle right now. So, yeah, I'm really happy with the way he's playing. He's a very difficult centre to contain at the moment. So a big thumbs up to Toa. I didn't think he had this sort of play over a couple of months in him that I've seen from him so far this season.
Gary, this afternoon when I was trolling through X, someone actually made a comment and said, why is it every time we play the Cowboys, Stafford Toa turns into Mal Meninga? I thought that was a very clever comment.
It was a very clever comment, but it's a comment that's a little unfair on him, in my opinion.
This year.
Because he's been showing that level of play, apart from when he was injured all season. And that left-hand fend has been causing his opposition centre a lot of trouble all season. And it's not surprising that Taruva is our leading try scorer at the moment, because he's playing outside Toa, and Toa's providing him with plenty of space and plenty of good ball. So it's been really pleasing to see. I wouldn't have picked him. I didn't really want him in the side come round one. But he's the first centre pick for us right now, and I'm happy for him to go into next season as one of our starting centres.
100%. I know that I mentioned quite a few pods ago that I'd listened to an interview with Benji not that long ago, and he was talking about Stafford Toa. Someone had asked him a question about Stafford, and Benji's comment was that the last couple of seasons he's been playing with a lot of injuries and playing through injuries as well. And Benji's words were he knew that what we're seeing with Stafford, especially with his consistency picking up now, he knew it was there. He just had to get fully fit and fully strong and ready for NRL to do it consistently. And I think that's what we're starting to see. So Benji's seen it, and I think we're starting to see that on the field, which is really good.
He's still only 24, and the more games
really
strings together, it feels like he's been around forever.
Yeah, because he was at Newcastle before he was with us. So
turns 25 this year. Yeah. So a lot of years still in him. So fingers crossed. Also, Dewey. I mean, defensively, I think he's from where he was 12 months ago, Gary, coming back from that injury. I think he's turning into a pretty decent defender. Like there was a couple of times last night where I thought they might beat him, and he managed to get there. Like he's obviously the centre that you're saying that we need an upgrade on.
Yeah, look, I just don't. I think he's having a good year. I think he's playing much better football than I expected. I wouldn't have had him starting side at all. In fact, I wouldn't have re-signed him last year. But I think he's very safe at the moment. Defensively, for the most part, the effort is still there. I did see a little bit of laziness on the chase of one of their tries last night, but I can't really fault him for that because the effort has been there all season. I just want a little bit more danger out of him. He's still slow as a wet week, and I think we just need a little bit more threat out wide than what he can provide at the moment. But I'm very happy with how he's performed this year, and I'd be very happy to offer him a 1-year contract, pretty much on the knowledge that if we upgrade to another centre, that they probably get his spot. I think he's been good this year,
and his goal kicking's been very good as well, Steve.
When we do go into attacking structure and we have those sweeping plays that Toa is now such an important part of, and also Buller's a really important part of, we sort of limit ourselves having Dewey at centre on the other side because he's not that type of player. He's not a catch and pass, at pace sort of player. He's more hit the line, deft footwork at the line, and try to jink his way through and maybe hold up a defender and get a ball away. And that doesn't really suit the structure that we show when we are showing structure. So I agree, he's improved a lot, but I still find him fairly frustrating to watch because, the ball comes to him and then we go nowhere. We sort of got to start again. He's almost playing, like a settling type hit up role in the attack. And I think we need to be able to have that sweeping play on both sides of the field, I think.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Heath Mason, Nick, he straightened the attack. He scored a lovely try himself. What I liked as well was that I didn't have my heart in my mouth every time the ball went out to our right because it felt like defensively he was a lot tighter than what we've had there previously. Latu Fainu, if fit, what are you doing with that number 6 jersey or that number 7 jersey? Who gets it, Mason or Latu this weekend?
Yeah, I had a quick chat over Messenger with Gary a couple of hours ago about this. So,
did I reply?
Yeah, you did. You did. Maybe it's your COVID. You got a bit of amnesia, but
different Gary.
Different Gary. I'd give Heath another run. If Latu was fit, I'd probably put Latu on the bench. We're going to be missing 12 next week, so there's probably a lock position that we need to fill there. So there's probably a bit of shuffling that could happen too. So I think potentially once the game settles next week, that potentially you could bring Latu on and put him in that 13 sort of role and get him ball playing as well. But I'd definitely give Heath another go. I don't think Heath did anything wrong. And one question I actually had during the midweek pod a couple of days ago about Heath was what his kicking game looked like because I hadn't seen it. I thought it was pretty good. It was no worse than what Jerome was putting in last night either. So I haven't seen any short kicks from him, but he could get the ball down the field pretty well. So I liked what I saw.
Yeah, well, that's first game up in the line in first grade, and he didn't look too out of place. Give him 20, 25 games. There might be a player there, Gary.
Yeah, defensively, my biggest concern going into yesterday was him defending in the front line, and I thought he did a really good job of that. Put his body on the line and made his tackles that he had to make. I thought he was really strong. His performance last night, what it does for me is it means that we don't have to parachute in Latu Fainu next week. And I think that's actually a really good thing. Latu's coming back. He's been having hamstring issues for, 18 months now. So, for me, Latu plays reserve grade next week, and you build up his time and you build him up properly and allow him to return in a safe manner. And Heath Mason playing well last night provide you with that opportunity. Now he could turn around on Sunday and have a really poor game, and then you don't have a choice but to look at Latu. But at this point in time, Heath Mason gives you the benefit of being a little bit more careful with Latu, and I think we do need to be. I do want to see Latu in the halves for a good chunk of time this season because, if that's what we're moving forward with, I'd like more data on how he's going to go in that area. But I think Mason did a solid job last night and looked dangerous with the ball, and I think is a really good option for us next week. I'll be picking him at 5'8" next weekend.
Just one other thing on Heath too. He looks really, really well received, by the boys. So he looks like one of the boys. And there's been articles about Heath over the last couple of days about how much he loves the club and he doesn't want to be anywhere else but West Tigers. And he played like that too. He really took that opportunity. And Gary, what you're talking about defensive-wise too, at fullback, he's behind the line a lot of the time in defence, and he's a little fella. And when big boys or anyone's running at him at speed and he's waiting to make that impact, he does look a little bit fragile there. But in the halves last night, he was in the defensive line and up really quick because he's so explosive off the mark too. I think that helps him out in defence, but he didn't shy away. He didn't give anything away. Body size wise, he was up in that defensive line quicker than anyone. I really liked what I saw.
Yeah, 100%. Jarrell Skelton apparently back as well. I mean, we'll know more on the midweek pod, but that, I guess most people would say he'll come in for Charlie Staines, but I don't think Charlie deserves to be dropped. But I get that Skelton has more impact. Gary, I was going to ask you, there were some wins in the lower grade, which is fantastic to see. The New South Wales Cup team got a win. Oh, my goodness, it's a miracle. But you watched the game, I believe. Anybody take your fancy that might come into first grade? Kittler Lilly is the one that sort of I have on my mind, given Twil's going to be up.
Yeah, Kit. I thought Kit was quite strong. I do want to see him move up into that first grade side. Luke, who played fullback, was very dangerous, scored a really nice try, created space for players outside him, so I thought he did a really good job about playing fullback. So, yeah, it was a really solid game yesterday. It was kind of the opposite of the first grade. They got off to a really nice lead, and then Newtown really came back at them at the end, and they just managed to hold on. But, yeah, Luke really impressed me yesterday. He was the standout for me in that game. So I think we'll be seeing him in first grade again at some point this year.
I watched the highlights of that one today, Gary, on the website. So Talon looked like he was doing normal Talon things. Yeah,
Talon played really well. I thought he was he had a great game. Really looked like he's fighting for it to get his spot back to me, and he was probably the best player on the field.
Did he get through 80 minutes?
I can't quite remember. I was actually watching two games at once. I was watching the reserve grade game and the NRL game that was on at the same time, so I can't tell you whether he played the full 80.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's another West Tigers podcast. It's another post-defeat edition of the West Tigers podcast. I could do these blindfolded and with my, with my ears blocked because we've done so many. We've got so much practice at post-loss editions of the pod.
So what's this? This is number 405 or something. So what? At least 380 of those have been post-loss.
We should do the math. Yeah.
So can I just say, Steve's face just looks like a permanent post-loss face. Steve, can you smile? I know this is audio and no one can see you, but I'm looking at you, mate, and you just look sad.
Thanks, Nick.
Look, knowing you have to come on here and speak to you for an hour, Nick, it kind of does that.
Thanks, Gary.
Well, as I said right at the beginning, if it wasn't for that comeback, and not that the comeback really means much to me, but at least it gave me a little bit of energy and a little bit of enthusiasm, because if things had continued on from the 60-minute mark to the 80-minute mark on that same trajectory, there wouldn't have been this edition of the West Tigers podcast. So, yeah,
you started to sound like Eddie there,
over it I was. Yeah, I was just over it. Anyway, yep, Nick?
And Penrith Panthers next week. That's going to be tough. I know Penrith is still below us, but for how much longer, I don't know. So I can just see it now. Tigers lose to Penrith next week. The media is going to be all about Penrith and their climb back up the ladder. So
just go straight to the negative. What happens when they lose next week? They'll be talking about them getting the wooden spoon again.
Well, Eddie's word was actually spoon watch, so he is on spoon watch. He could also be on suicide watch. So Eddie, I'm looking out for you, mate. Hope you're right.
Batman versus Robin. Big game this weekend. Let's leave that for the midweek pod. Thank you, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, boys.